The desert road outside Fallujah stretched in front of us, like a ribbon of heat-baked glass. It was early morning, but the sun already pressed down hard, turning the inside of our MRAP into a metallic oven. I wiped my neck with a damp cloth and glanced at the woman sitting across from me, Captain Laura Jennings. She was staring out the window, jaw set, eyes sharp beneath the brim of her helmet. Captain Jennings always looked like she was thinking 20 minutes ahead of everyone else. Even in the chaos of Iraq, she moved with the kind of confidence that made young soldiers like me believe we were bulletproof just by being near her. "Harper," she said without looking at me, "hydrate. You look like you're about to pass out." "I'm good, ma'am," I answered. She finally turned, raising a brow. "You're sweating through your vest." I laughed weakly. That's the style nowadays. Her mouth twitched, almost a smile. Captain Jennings rarely smiled fully. It was as if she saved every ounce of warmth for when a soldier really needed it. The radio crackled, cutting through the morning hum. "Convoy, prepare to move. Destination Fallujah checkpoint. We are wheels rolling in 3." I checked my gear. Rifle locked, ammo secured, tourniquet strapped to my vest. My hands shook slightly, but I steadied them. Today was supposed to be routine. Just a security run, nothing special. But in Iraq, the word routine always made my stomach twist. Captain Jennings tapped my boot with hers. "Harper," she said in a steady voice, deep breath.
"In. Out."
Again. I followed her instructions. The shaking stopped. "Good," she said quietly. "Nerves mean you're alive. You lose the nerves, you stop paying attention." The convoy lurched forward. Dust bellowed behind the wheels as we moved through the open desert. The world outside was beige and endless, broken only by the occasional compound or the skeletons of destroyed vehicles left to rust in the sand. "Captain," our driver, Mitchell, called over his shoulder. "Intel said this route has been clear for weeks." "MMH," she responded, eyes still scanning the horizon. "There's no such thing as a clear route in Iraq." Something in her voice made the hairs on my arms stand up. We were about 20 minutes from the checkpoint when it happened. A sudden pop, almost too soft to notice, followed by a blinding flash.
Boom.
The lead vehicle erupted into a fireball. The shockwave slammed against our MRAP like a giant's fist, flipping us sideways. I felt weightless for a second before gravity yanked me down. My helmet cracked against the metal wall. Everything blurred. The ringing in my ears, the dust choking the air, the screams from the front. "Ambush!" someone yelled. I tried to sit up, but pain shot up my left leg, sharp, electric, blinding. When I looked down, my breath caught in my throat. My leg was pinned beneath a piece of twisted metal. Blood seeped through my uniform. I was trapped. Gunfire erupted outside, sharp bursts echoing off the wreckage. Our guys returned fire, yelling commands I couldn't process. My vision tunneled. That's when I saw her, Captain Jennings, crawling through the wreckage toward me. "Harper," she yelled, voice barely audible over the gunfire. "Stay with me." She grabbed the metal piece crushing my leg and strained, muscles trembling. "Mitchell, help me pull this off." But Mitchell was slumped over the wheel, unmoving. The realization hit us at the same time. Captain Jennings' jaw clenched. She braced herself, blood trickling down her own arm from a wound I hadn't noticed. With a grunt, she leveraged her entire body weight against the metal. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on, move." The metal lifted just enough for her to yank my leg free. Pain exploded through me so violently that I nearly passed out. "Harper, look at me," she commanded. I tried. Her face swam in and out of focus. "You have to crawl," she said. "We're exposed here." The bullets intensified, peppering the sides of the MRAP. She ducked instinctively, shielding me with her body. "Ma'am," I gasped, I can't." "Yes, you can." Her voice dropped to a tone I had never heard from her, soft, almost pleading. "I need you to fight. You hear me? I'm not letting you die here." With her help, we moved inch by inch across the sand. Every movement sent pain knifing through my body, but she wouldn't let me stop. She practically dragged me with one arm while firing her sidearm with the other. We reached a crumbled wall, thin cover, but cover nonetheless. My vision flickered. Darkness tugged at the edges. Captain Jennings pressed her forehead to mine. Harper, stay awake. Stay awake. I order you to stay awake. I held on. And then there was another sound, a distant roar. Air support. Moments later, the ground shook again as the A-10's cannon tore through the enemy positions. The world dissolved into noise, heat, and darkness. I passed out with her hand gripping mine. I woke up in a military hospital in Baghdad. My leg was heavily bandaged, elevated by straps. Pain medication fogged my thoughts. The first thing I asked was, "Where's Captain Jennings?" The nurse paused. "She's alive," he said gently, "recovering from gunshot wounds. She saved your life." "Can I see her?" He hesitated. "She's already been moved to another facility." Days passed, then weeks. I was eventually evacuated back to the States for reconstructive surgery. I asked again and again to see her, or at least contact her. But she never wrote, never called, never answered my messages. 1 month later, I got a brief official notice. Captain Laura Jennings, honorably retired. Medical board decision complete. Just like that, she was gone. A hero who walked away without saying goodbye. The silence gnawed at me. She was the reason I was alive, yet she vanished like a shadow at dawn. I tried to convince myself she needed space. But deep down, something felt wrong. She wasn't the type of person who walked away from people. Not unless she was running from something. Never fully went away, but I rebuilt my strength. Became a physical therapy coach for fellow veterans. Helped soldiers who knew the same pain I did. But the memory of Captain Jennings lived like a bruise in my chest. A bruise that never faded. I searched for her, lightly at first, then obsessively. I contacted old unit members. I checked online records. I even reached out to VA coordinators. Nothing. It was as if she had erased herself from the world. Then, 14 years after Fallujah, a letter arrived. A thin envelope with my name handwritten across the front. Inside, a single sheet of paper. "Emily, I'm sorry I left without saying goodbye. I didn't know how to face you. I don't know how to face anyone now. Laura." No address. No phone number. Just guilt, heavy and suffocating, pressed into ink. My hands trembled as I held the note. I had imagined hearing from her again 1,000 times, but not like this. Not a cry for help disguised as an apology. For the next 3 months, I tried everything to find her. I contacted everyone who might know her. No luck. I visited old duty stations. No trace. It wasn't until I posted online in a veterans group that someone replied privately. A former medic wrote, "I think I saw her. Women's shelter on Maple Street." My breath caught. A shelter? Captain Jennings, the fiercest, strongest leader I had ever known, reduced to living in a shelter? I couldn't believe it. And yet, something in my gut told me it was true. The next morning, I drove 2 hours to the address. The shelter was a repurposed church. A hand-painted sign out front read Harbor Haven, a safe place for women. Inside, a volunteer greeted me kindly. "Can I help you?" I swallowed hard. "I'm looking for someone. Her name is Laura Jennings." The woman's expression shifted, subtly but enough. She's in the common room," she said carefully. "She doesn't get many visitors." That alone nearly broke me. I walked through a hallway that smelled faintly of coffee and lavender. My heart hammered with every step. When I entered the common room, I saw her immediately. Sitting alone, back hunched, hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee. Her hair was shorter now, streaked with gray at the temples. Her clothes were plain, but the posture, the quiet vigilance, was still unmistakably hers. "Captain Jennings?" I whispered. She didn't look up. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stepped closer. "Ma'am." Staff Sergeant Emily Harper, reporting for duty. Her head jerked up, eyes widening in shock. "Emily," she whispered, voice cracking. She looked both stunned and ashamed. I dropped to my knees in front of her. I found your letter. I came as fast as I could. She blinked rapidly, as if trying to wake from a dream. No, she murmured. You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't see me like this. Why not? I asked gently. Her hands trembled. Because I'm not the person I used to be. I reached out and held her shaking fingers. Ma'am, none of us are. That was when she finally broke. Tears filled her eyes and spilled down her cheeks. Silent tears, the kind that come from years of holding everything in. I'm so tired, she whispered. I know, I said. But you're not alone anymore. We talked for hours. She told me what had happened after the ambush. The nightmares. The guilt. The crushing belief that she hadn't done enough. That Mitchell died because she wasn't fast enough. That I would have died if she had hesitated even 1 second more. Every night the scene replayed, she said. But in my version you died. And I couldn't save you. I squeezed her hand. But I lived. Because of you. She shook her head violently. I left because I couldn't accept that. I couldn't let you see the mess I had become. You weren't a mess. You were suffering. I whispered. There's a difference. No, she said softly, there isn't. I leaned closer. Do you remember what you told me in that MRAP? You ordered me to stay alive. Now it's my turn. Slowly, painfully, she nodded. That night, I stayed with her at the shelter. Not because she asked, but because she shouldn't have been alone. She fell asleep sitting upright, head resting lightly on my shoulder. I watched her chest rise and fall with deep breaths. The woman who once dragged me through bullets was now fighting a war no one else could see. The next morning, she hesitated when I suggested going to the VA. I can't, she said. I don't deserve help. You deserve every kind of help, I insisted. And I'll go with you. Every step. She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since that desert. Emily, why? Because you saved my life. And I'm not repaying a debt. I'm returning a promise. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed her emotions. We walked into the VA together. She kept her head down, but her hand brushed mine. A silent thank you. Getting her into treatment was not easy. Trauma rarely budges on the first push. But she showed up. Again and again. She attended therapy, joined a support group, started writing again, something she'd abandoned years ago. She even smiled once in a while.
A real smile this time.
I visited her often, and each time she looked a little more like the Captain Jennings I remembered, strong, steady, focused. But now, she wasn't carrying her strength alone. Months passed.
Seasons changed.
Captain Jennings slowly rebuilt a life she thought she'd never have again. She moved into her own apartment, small, cozy, filled with sunlight. She started mentoring younger female veterans, helping them navigate the maze of trauma and recovery. This feels strange, she admitted one afternoon. To have a purpose again. You've always had one, I said. You just lost sight of it. She smiled faintly. Thanks to you. I'm finding it again. We sat together on her balcony, drinking the cheap instant coffee she loved for reasons I still didn't understand. You know, she said thoughtfully, the army teaches you how to survive. But no one teaches you how to come home. I nodded. That's why we need each other. Her eyes glistened, not with pain this time, but with gratitude. On the anniversary of the ambush, we stood together at a small memorial site dedicated to our fallen unit members. She placed a hand on Mitchell's name etched into the stone. I thought I failed him, she whispered.
You didn't, I said.
You carried us when we couldn't carry ourselves. Slowly, she exhaled. Emily, she said, turning to me, you saved me. No, I replied. You saved me first. Everything after was just me catching up. She laughed softly, wiping a tear. You always were stubborn, says the woman who dragged a wounded sergeant across a firefight. We walked away from the memorial side by side, two soldiers bound not by rank or duty, but by survival and choice. There was no dramatic music. No slow-motion moment. Just the quiet strength of two lives that refused to give up. Years later, at a veterans leadership event, I watched her walk across the stage wearing the uniform she once believed she'd never deserve again. The audience rose to their feet as her name was announced. Please welcome Navy Admiral Ret Lara Jennings, recipient of the Valor Award. She paused at the podium, scanning the crowd, and her eyes found mine. And then she said something that made my breath catch. 14 years ago, I saved a young soldier in Iraq. I thought that was my greatest act of service. I was wrong, because years later, that same soldier saved me from myself. Tears threatened my eyes, but I held them back. The crowd erupted in applause. Captain Jennings, my captain, my hero, stood tall, proud, alive. And I finally understood. She didn't just save my life once. She saved it twice. Final words. This isn't a story about war. It's a story about survival, both on the battlefield and in the silent years that follow. About two women who carried each other through hell and back. Captain Lara Jennings saved me in Iraq. 14 years later, I saved her from the battle no one saw. And we kept the promise soldiers always make. No one gets left behind. If you want the next story, same length, same tone, different title, just tell me the title and I'll write it. Years later, at a veterans leadership event, I watched her walk across the stage wearing the uniform she once believed she'd never deserve again. The audience rose to their feet as her name was announced. Please welcome Navy Admiral Ret Lara Jennings, recipient of the Valor Award. She paused at the podium, scanning the crowd, and her eyes found mine. And then she said something that made my breath catch. 14 years ago, I saved a young soldier in Iraq. I thought that was my greatest act of service. I was wrong, because years later, that same soldier saved me from myself. Tears threatened my eyes, but I held them back. The crowd erupted in applause. Captain Jennings, my captain, my hero, stood tall, proud, alive. And I finally understood. She didn't just save my life once. She saved it twice. This isn't a story about war. It's a story about survival, both on the battlefield and in the silent years that follow. About two women who carried each other through hell and back. Captain Lara Jennings saved me in Iraq. 14 years later, I saved her from the battle no one saw. And we kept the promise soldiers always make. No one gets left behind. If you want the next story, same length, same tone, different title, just tell me the title and I'll write it.